Space Madness, written by Curious Wombat 42. It is a universally known fact that intelligent biological life was not meant for prolonged exposure to the emptiness of space. Most advanced species gave up on manned space exploration early in their development, and while those with a higher tolerance for pain and mental strain have carved out little pockets of the galaxy to call their own, travel between the stars is done mostly by fully automized, AI-controlled ships, and there was a good reason for it. There were many names for this affliction. Some more spiritually inclined empires called it the corrupting void, an unseen and malign entity clawing at their body and soul after spending too much time off-planet, especially during FTL travel. The corruption can be staved off by strict meditative focus, banishing the thoughts of the vast emptiness around you and mentally grounding yourself to not fall into its maddening lure. Those who scoffed at the idea of a supernatural explanation pointed at a lethal combination of cavern pressure, homesickness, social stigmata, as well as the ever-present subconscious dread created by being only a technical malfunction away from myriads of gruesome fates all at once. Adding the effects of raw physical strain of traveling at psychic-defying speed on top of the pile, they coined the so-called medical condition the psychoschematic vacuum proximity-induced FTL sickness. Well, that's what the preachers and lab boys called it, at least. The rest of the universe got it a much simpler name: space madness. Its severity varies, but it starts with general feelings of anxiousness. The feeling that you might get when you walk through a lively wildlife preserve outside a city dome and suddenly everything falls silent. Your backside scales begin to raise and shift to a more deflective position as the primal urge to run grows and grows. There is a predator near, and not seeing anything that could directly harm you just makes it worse. Working on an orbital docking station, only part-time of course, as it is legally required to return to the ground after 80 sleep cycles, I know the feeling all too well. It is not so bad when the station is bustling with customers, but during the breaks, let's just say that unpaid overtime is a lesser evil compared to spending longer than necessary in the empty break room, nervously fixating on every sound this giant space-bound metal coffin that you are trapped in can surprise you with. After this, you reach one or two following stages. Those of us that evolved from prey species, such as myself, generally descend into a catatonic state of overwhelming fear that can lead to severe depression, heart failure, long-lasting panic attacks, and a variety of heavy phobias. Those that evolve from predators instead become increasingly irritated and aggressive, causing spurts of violence, paranoia, highly destructive behavior, and sometimes even full-scale murderous rampages. And then there are the humans. Humans seem to not be affected by space madness, or other interstellar travelers reaching my station for refueling and emergencies would look sickly and disoriented. Exhaustion from the safety-required cryosleep. Humans made it off their ships with nothing but a grin on their face and a ravenous hunger for unhealthy sustenance and intoxicating beverages. Their apparent immunity to space madness made them valuable temporary station workers, often running the emergency shifts. The knowledge of someone working on your station that could work even when others would suffer a mental breakdown, however, did not increase morale as one might think. In fact, the mere presence of a human tends to terrify people even though they are not of an imposing build in comparison to the galactic standard. Neither were they going out of their way to be intimidating, I think. Yes, they do the whole teeth-baring greeting thing, which can upset someone not used to such a display. And yes, they do carry around an excessive number of weapons wherever they go, even if they tend to be archaic and not very effective. But the main reason the humans were scary was because they loved space a lot. Their entire species seemed to be obsessed with space travel. They were one of the few species that joined the Galactic Senate not after being contacted by automated survey ships, but by sending manned envoy ships into, and I am quoting the first Terran ambassador here, into every corner of this goddamn galaxy until we find someone to race against or run out of voluntaries to send into space. And we have a lot of voluntaries. They thrive in the space between the void, First, they were confused why no one else was sharing their passion. For them, the rush of blazing through the stars at the speed of light was a joy only overtaken by the beauty of the far places of the galaxy full of wonder. After being taught the dangers of space madness, they just laughed and gave their condolences to the poor ground-chained sods that could not see a good time when it slapped them in the face. After being barred entry to most planets to prevent their dangerous influence to spread, they can now be found hopping from station to station, selling resources mined at the fringes of the galaxy, telling tall tales of what they have seen on their travels and drinking themselves into a stupor before shooting back into the terrifying void they came from. Maybe the idea that humans are immune to space madness is not entirely correct. Maybe the reason why humanity feels so at home in the maddening emptiness that lurks outside is that when they stare into the insanity of the abyss, it stares back at a species even madder. End of story. Story number 2, A Protected Species, written by Drunk Gamer 4000. Over countless millennia, humanity has proven itself the organism most adept at killing its own kind. This grim talent, etched deep into the marrow of its history, persists unchanged. Should you ever encounter something better at war than a human, odds are it was a human, either cloaked beneath a facade or imbued with the indomitable human soul. Yet, for all its storied legacy of violence, one enigma has long perplexed the Imperium of Man: the decision of the Council of Xenos to classify humanity as a protected species. The Council, composed of representatives from the galaxy's most ancient and powerful races, deemed humanity far too fragile for the horrors of war. To them, humans were not warriors, but caretakers of tools they could scarcely understand. They envisioned humans as traders, diplomats, and laborers, roles deemed befitting their limited capabilities. Soldiers, never. Warriors, certainly not. To the elder races, humanity was a flickering anomaly, an industrious footnote destined to play a supporting role in the grand galactic narrative. Saddling such a delicate species with the burdens of conquest or defense seemed not just unwise, but cruel. In their eyes, humanity's chaotic history of conflict was a relic of their planetary adolescence, not a harbinger of their potential. The Imperium of Man, however, did not respond with wounded pride or defiance. Instead, they accepted the designation with a peculiar mixture of humility and curiosity. The decision was a dismissal, but also an opportunity. And so the Imperium agreed on one condition. Any and all council members must treat humanity as an equal, with the full rights and consequences of equality, including the capacity to wage war or be warred upon. The clause, buried deep within the reams of agreements, was dismissed as a curious flourish, a whimsical request from an over-eager species. The council, bemused by the audacity of the fledgling race, agreed without hesitation. After all, how could such a naive species hope to wield the tools of power effectively? Humanity's ambition would surely outpace its ability, and in time their naivete would prove their undoing. They could not have been more wrong. The misunderstandings became tragically evident when the Kolonvon Empire declared war on the Imperium of Man. The Kolonvon were an apex predator species, a nightmare rendered in chitin and muscle, towering insectoid behemoths. Their razor-edged limbs could cleave through steel, their exoskeletons impervious to the most known weaponry. Clouds of toxic nitrogen spewed from their glands, suffocating anything foolish enough to engage them in close quarters. They were engineered for domination, and conquest was etched into their genetic code. When they turned their gaze upon humanity, they saw only a weak and unremarkable species, a target ripe for plunder. The solar system, with its nascent colonies and burgeoning industries, was little more than an appetizer. The war began with precision orbital strikes. Planets burned, billions died, and the stars themselves seemed to echo the screams of the dying. In mere weeks, humanity's outer colonies were rendered lifeless husks, shattered monuments to the Quanlonvan supremacy. The Council of Xenos convened an emergency session, expecting humanity's representative to arrive in desperation, pleading for aid. Surely, the protected species now understood their place. But humanity did not plead. They arrived in silence. No cries for mercy, no appeals for protection. They stood, nodded once, and left the chamber without a word. What followed was not a counterattack. It was an annihilation. The Imperium's fleets descended upon the Kunlunvan territory with a fury the galaxy had never witnessed. Humanity's warships, sleek and bristling with weapons, tore through the invaders' defenses with brutal efficiency. Kinetic weapons shattered planets, railguns hurled projectiles with the force of extinction events, and orbital bombardments rendered entire worlds uninhabitable. The Quanlunvan biological advantages, once insurmountable, were dissected and nullified with terrifying speed. Humanity's bioweapons turned their exoskeletons into rotting prisons. Their adaptive nanotechnology neutralized their toxic gases. The predators became prey, hunted with cold, merciless precision. The entire planets fell in days. Those too fortified to conquer were not spared but erased, transformed into singularities by humanity's most horrifying weapons. Where the Kuyulanvan sought domination, humanity delivered extinction. By the end, the Kuyulanvan were driven back to their homeworld, a once proud empire reduced to ash and desperation. Humanity, victorious, did not pause to celebrate. They finished what they had started, ensuring the Kunlunvan's annihilation with a cold, methodical efficiency that left the galaxy trembling. The Council of Xenos, watching from afar, was forced to confront the magnitude of their error. The protected species had revealed its true nature. Humanity was not a harmless anomaly. It was a weapon honed by eons of self-destruction, its potential masked by humility and misdirection. The galaxy was terrified. The stories spread like wildfire. Humanity was not a species to be ignored or underestimated. They were a force of nature, an extinction event in the shape of a smile. And humanity was happy. For the first time, the universe had seen them for what they truly were, and the revelation filled them with grim satisfaction. The lesson etched into the stars was one the galaxy would never forget. The monsters you fear most don't hide in shadows or distant systems. They sit across from you, patient and smiling, waiting for the moment you mistake their humility for weakness. And humanity was smiling still, for they had found their purpose in the ashes of war and had discovered the unsettling truth that brought them joy. The universe was scared, and they were happy about it. End of story. I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Vidmori, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.